Would you mind telling me whose brain I did put in?
Abby someone.
Abby someone. Abby who?
Abby Normal.
Abby Normal.
That's right.
I'm almost sure that was the name.
720 WGN. Leigh Richardson is the founder and clinical director for the Brain Performance Center. Good evening and welcome to WGN.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Sure. Founder and clinical director, brain health expert, regularly contributes to radio and television stations across the nation. God knows they need it. Whether it is anxiety, ADHD, depression, insomnia, or brain injury, author of Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On, international speaker, and popular syndicated radio host. So, those are some pretty heavy-duty credentials, and we've been looking for somebody with those kind of credentials to talk to us about, amongst other things, the use of psychedelics by Green Bay Packer quarterback Aaron Rodgers, that has gone quite public about his use of a certain psychedelic that he went, I believe, to South America a couple of times to use, and he has credited it with helping him achieve the best seasons of his career. What's the story here? What's going on?
Well, you know, when I hear the name Aaron Rodgers, I think rock star in the football world. What do you think?
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah. So I watched the podcast that Aaron did. Did you know Aaron was 5 years old when he decided he was going to become a major football player? And you know what happened to him when he graduated from high school? You know where he went to play?
Tell me.
A community college. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, but he never allowed a degree. He never allowed himself to get complacent. He had his eye on the prize, and he continued to work hard and commit and give it everything he had until he got there.
Right.
And, you know, you're a performer. I'm sure that you say the wrong word and somebody hears it, and I'd be willing to bet you it comes right back at you. I don't wish that on you.
It can, yeah.
And any performer, particularly a major athlete or singer or dancer, oh my gosh, you know, you miss it by half an inch. You pick up the paper, turn on the radio, and that's all you hear. That's all you hear. And I think that when you have the resilience that he had, and you put up with that on a daily basis, and you know, that's injustice. But that injustice gets all these negative thoughts going on in the brain. I mean, I used to have them. I used to have the worst case of the shoulds you've ever seen in your life. Had to dump them because they had these two friends, shame and blame. Should have done it. It's all your fault. Nothing happened. But think about what a professional performer deals with. And he kept himself motivated to be the best he could be. And through the use of psychedelics, he found a way to, I used to call it self-care, and then it elevated to self-love, which is what he called it. And now I call it soul care. He found a way to bridge the subconscious and make peace and accept himself for everything he's done, probably everything he hadn't done. And, you know, I'll never forget. I had just had twins, and my mom, and I was a twin. My mom came to stay with me, and I came down one morning. She's like, "You going to the gym?" I'm like, "Oh, no, Mom, you're here." And she's like, "I'm going to tell you one thing. You can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of anybody else until you take care of yourself." And that's what I think Aaron Rodgers experienced. He couldn't practice self-love for his teammates until he did for himself.
Well, I can understand the whole process and the should and the could and all of that, and his determination to succeed. And I agree with you, in many walks of life, there are people of that ilk, and definitely in the world of professional football, There are star players who have reached incredible heights of success and wealth and fame, but this is the first time I've ever heard anyone with the image of an Aaron Rodgers talk specifically about taking psychedelics and being positive about it and contributing and saying that it contributed to their performance. This is the first time I've ever heard of anything like that.
I hear you, man. I mean, when I think of psychedelics, I think of that's very whimsical, that's very, kind of voodoo kind of stuff. Are you familiar with the Johns Hopkins Medical Center?
Of course.
We all are. Of course we are. Did you know that they started studying this back in the 50s and the 60s, and in the 70s it got shut down, and I don't know why, but I know in the year 2000 they reunited their quest, and they have the Johns Hopkins Center of Consciousness that studies psychedelics and how it can help mental and physical health. And in 2006, they started publishing. I mean, I'm in a PhD program, and when they say they've published in over 60 scholarly articles that are peer reviewed, I know enough to go, wow, that's a big deal. And they've looked at how they can use psychedelics to help with depression and anxiety and alcohol and physical issues as well. So, I mean, we as a society have used these types of remedies as treatments for thousands of years. And then we brought in synthetic chemicals, and with the hope, the big pharma world brought this in with the hope that it would provide the remedies and the connections and the cures that we all need. But we've learned over the years that it's got its drawbacks too. And, the work that I do at the Brain Performance Center, we create organic change in the brain. And, I've never been a big fan of psychedelics. Honestly, they scare me to death. But if that's a way that you can connect organically with yourself under the right circumstances, in the right environment.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing clinical trials of this in Canada. So it's not as well advertised or talked about.
Right.
Could that be because the pharmaceutical world doesn't want it? I don't know. But there's certainly different factors that come into play.
It sort of reminds me to a certain extent of medical marijuana. I mean, it has a stigma with it, or at least used to, when LSD and one of the other psychedelics, mushrooms, etc. There was a stigma, maybe the wrong term, but an illegality. It brought to mind certain stereotypes, lifestyles, etc. The same thing that marijuana did up until relatively recent times, with some states allowing medical marijuana and then also following with recreational. But this is taking it up to a different level. And as you mentioned, we as human beings, we've been treating ourselves with these types of things for centuries. And apparently the substance that Aaron Rodgers used is an ancient hallucinogenic plant-based drink, which I had never heard of. And he must have taken it under, hopefully anyway, he must have taken it under certain situations that were safe, because he credits the taking of this particular psychedelic, as I said before, with, I really feel, he says, this is a quote, I really feel like that experience paved the way for me to have the best season of my career. So this has got to be an item of conversation throughout the NFL and the sporting world, and it's not a performance-enhancing drug in the sense of steroids or anything physical like that, but if it enhances your well-being and your self-love and your self-worth, then we're talking about something completely different, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And in my world, what we're talking about is, I think every professional athlete or performer undergoes some level of anxiety, performance anxiety.
Oh, sure.
And absolutely. And I work with people that have severe anxiety and depression every day. And when you can calm that brain down and you can allow that self-acceptance to come into play, It's a game changer, and I think that's exactly what the psychedelic, the DMT that he took did for him. It worked at that subconscious level, and it released there's a lot of emotional trauma. Can you imagine playing football since you're 5 years old, you graduate from high school, and you get a community college row? And that's a great row. Nothing wrong with that. But then he goes on to rock it up to MVP for 2 years in a row.
Right. Oh, I know.
Yeah, that comes from self-acceptance. That comes from belief in self. That comes from just good old self-confidence. I've got 2 graduate degrees. I'm finishing a PhD. Never taken a course in self-confidence. It's got to come from within.
So you're a brain expert. What do you think the future of the brain and the psychedelics are for all of us in the upcoming years? Do you think there's going to be an eventual medical application? I saw an article that said psilocybin microdosing study finds improved mental health and psychomotor performance in those 55 or older. Are we? And then you have Aaron Rodgers. Are we heading in this direction?
Well, I follow the Johns Hopkins because I have utmost respect for them. They started off this effort with $17 million of funding. In 2020, they were recognized and got a big award for a grant. And we don't have a choice. We have seen how inefficient pharmaceutical synthetic chemicals are for the brain. Now, if you're taking them and they work for you, rocket, man, but they don't do that for everybody. I work with a lot of people, serious side effects. It gets worse before it gets better. And I think that we have to look at everything that's out there. And anything that's organic, I am really curious about. Yeah. And anything that has the brain trust and the financial backing that Johns Hopkins has, sign me up.
Yep, you can't argue with Johns Hopkins. You're absolutely right. Leigh Richardson, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a very interesting, enlightening conversation, and maybe we can revisit again somewhere down the line. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. That's Leigh Richardson, founder and clinical director of the Brain Performance Center. John Landecker at 720 WGN.